Hey, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing Stranger Things from Command Games. Stranger Things is a cooperative game for 2 to 4 players taking place in the Stranger Things universe. Although I will say it's labeled as 2 to 4 players, I don't see why you couldn't play with one player if you're willing to double hand characters and have some small degree of awareness. So 2 to 4 player game that you can probably play as a solo experience. But the game takes place in the Stranger Things universe, specifically seasons 1 and 2. If you flip this board, which I'm not going to do for the sake of this over here, but if you flip this board over here, we'll have season 2 on the other side. We have season 1 right now we'll be diving through. They use the same core system with some slight different locations or goals you're going through. That's basically what's happening over here. Stranger Things 1 and 2, seasons 1 and 2, different scenarios, so to speak, to go through as you play through this. Now, the goal in season 1 over here is to rescue Will. Will is in trouble, you need to rescue him. You have all these various characters from the Stranger Things universe. You have 11 as your little round tracker across the 3 rounds of play. You're going to have your characters here. Here are 2 characters over here off the side we're not using, and you're going to have your hand of cards as you try to rescue Will, and to do that, you're going to be going to these 3 locations and defeating these stacks of tokens. As thematic as the game can be, the one thing that is not necessarily thematic is everything you do in the game comes down to defeating a stack of tokens. You see, in the game, what you're going to do on your turn is you're going to start with a move. Most characters have a movement of 1. I believe one character has a movement of 2, or is it 2? One of them. Just the Dustin over here has a movement of 2. Everyone else has a movement of 1. And what you're going to do is, let's pretend it's Lucas's turn. Lucas is currently over... Here we go, and Lucas is trying to achieve an objective. And right now, Lucas is actually happy where he is. He wants to start by investigating the lab in order to make this a little easier for us, which I understand you don't realize how, but I realize how, so let's go ahead and take care of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some cards. Now, I know that there's 2 tokens in the stack. I know the top one is a 3. On the regular side of the board, you know the top token of each stack. On the upside down, you don't know anything in the stack. So I have 2 tokens, and one's a 3, and the other number could be anywhere between a 0 and a 5, which means that stack value is between 3 to 8. And so let's try to figure out, I have a terrible hand of cards. I'm going to go ahead and, you know what? We're going to risk it over here. We're going to risk it a bit. We're going to play 1, 2... Wow, we're going to go ahead and play a 6 over here, okay? We're playing a total hand value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because of that, we're going to flip this over. We're going to see what we got. We got a 2. We successfully defeated the stack. As long as you were equal to or exceeding the stack, you successfully defeat it. And in this case, we now can ignore one of these tokens every round, which is really helpful because I played one of those. And we'll explain more about that in a second. But these are going to go back down. If I don't miss them, they're going to go back down into our stack pool over here. These will go into the action card discard pile. And then at the end of our turn, we're going to draw up new cards to replace our hand. We're going to go back up to 5 cards, and then we're going to go ahead and draw a scene card. In Act 1, you're going to draw 1 scene card. Act 2, 2, and Act 3, 3. You're going to be drawing 1, 2, or 3 scene cards, but you also draw more scene cards for every one of these little red exclamation marks you have on your cards. So right now, because we're in Act 1, and because we played one of those scene cards, we should draw 2 scenes over here, but this says we can ignore one of the triangles we played in our cards. We only played 1, so we'll draw 1 scene card, and this is the bad thing. Move the Demigorgon to your location. That's not great. Then any one character in your location gains 1 fear. Dustin's going to Lucas is over here is going to gain a fear. If you're in the upside down, the character gains fear equal to the number of Demigorgon stacks, which we have over here. And now this can go off to the side. That is going to be our scene card for the round. We'll go to Dustin's turn. Dustin will have his own hand of cards. I'm just going to use the same hand for simplicity, but every character would have their own hand. Dustin over here is currently over... Here we go. Here's Dustin. Dustin wants to move around. Maybe Dustin's going to adventurously try... No, we're not going to rescue Will. It's way too early to do so. But Dustin might go to... You know, we're just going to wander over here to 1, because again, you can move 1. You could discard cards to move additional spots if you want to. In this case, we're not going to. You know what? Should we fight the Demigorgon? No. You know what? We're going to fight the Demigorgon. So I'm going to discard a card to move 1 further. So we're going to move 1 further so we can fight the Demigorgon in that location. All these locations have actions, and some actions you have in the game are things like gathering items, which will help you as you play through the game. You're going to have gathering allies. You have 2 stacks where you can recruit allies, which will stay with you. Items are more temporary. You use them and lose them. You're going to have spots over here where you can investigate the lab, which will slowly open up the lab so you can play more of these dangerous cards with these on them. But right now, we discarded that to move 1 further, and we're going to play all 7 of these to be able to take down the Demigorgon, tackling one of their stacks, which is important. It's going to be important to help us out as we go through the game. Although I will note, I don't know if I would normally do this. I kind of want to show you what failure looks like so you understand how that works in the game. So we're going to take a stack over here. We're going to reveal them one at a time, and we have 3. We're still good. We have a total of 7. We're going to have 4. Actually, we have a total of 8. Whenever you have these walkie-talkies over here, they add 1 if you have a character in your location. So we actually have a total of 8, but we have a value there of 7, which means unless we draw a 0 and a 1, no, unfortunately, we exceeded our total, which means these are going to go away. And the first thing is we have a total here of 8 plus 6 is 14 to our 8, which means we're going to take the difference difference in fear. So we are going to take 6 fear on Dustin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are almost losing the game because if any character reaches the maximum fear, that's it. It's over. You've lost. Again, I didn't say this was a good action. I just want to show you how the game works. Then we're going to take these tokens up. We're going to shuffle them up over here, and we're going to remove one of them from the game, making it easier next time. So whenever you lose, you still effectively have made progress, making it easier to beat that stack the next time you tackle it, and that's basically what you're doing in the game. So again, you're going to be drawing up your turn. Every turn you get a free movement or a movement equal to your move stat. You can discard action cards to move further. You're going to be playing cards and then drawing scene cards depending on the act as well as the number of those critical symbols you've played. So if you want to play more stuff, you can get more done, but it might come at the cost unless you've investigated the lab enough to be able to clear all these off and ignore 3 of those every single turn, which can help you a lot. You're going to be recruiting allies, which will really help you. Karen Wheeler, at the start of your turn, any one character in your location may lose 2 fear. That's going to be really helpful if people hang around you to just lower your fear as you go through the game. Meanwhile, you're trying to ultimately defeat the Demigorgon stacks, and the reason for that is because there's these tokens over here. In the Rescue Will stacks, we're going to have a total of 12 tokens, 3 stacks of 4 tokens for Rescuing Will. And what happens in those stacks is that 5 of these are mixed in. 5 of these tokens over here are mixed into those stacks, and this is equal to the number of Demigorgon stacks you have, which is a number between 0 and 8. And having a bunch of these that could be as much as 8 as you add more and more Demigorgon stacks is terrifying. So defeating the Demigorgon effectively makes it easier to rescue Will. Slowly depleting the stacks of health from the Demigorgon make it so that you can actually rescue Will more easily as you go through the game. Meanwhile, you have the Demigorgon jumping around to location to location, stopping you from doing things. You have the Hawkins patrols moving around, and you also are able to help 11. Both above the board and down below, you can take the help 11 action, and you get different options you can do. So for example, telekinesis over here, if you deplete these 3 tokens, you can discard 2 full Demigorgon stacks, and this is where, if we have him in play, we're not actually using him, are we? No, we are. Here we go. Mike Wheeler over here has the special ability. You may perform a help 11 action in any location without a foe. In general, all the characters have an extra action they have, an extra special ability, and Mike is great at taking the help 11 action regardless of where he is, which can be really useful for being able to tackle the stack, depleting those, and then putting those back into the pile over there. And so you have all these tools at your disposal. You have to be mindful as you navigate the upside down. You're going to have a lot of spots that give you fear just for moving around the board. And that's basically what you're doing. You're gathering items, you're gathering alloys, you're trying to be mindful of your hand of cards as you try to be mindful of your action economy, occasionally defeating patrols, although I rarely find that worth it. You have a giant stack of 4, and all it does is really move the patrol. In order to get rid of a patrol, you actually have to use Psionic Blast from the upside down to get rid of a patrol, but you're trying to be mindful of all these factors as you ultimately slowly take down the Demigorgon, power up your characters, and try to rescue Will before time runs out. And that's basically what happens as far as how this works. Season 2 is going to be the same basic concept, except instead of rescuing Will, you're closing the gates. The small differences to the board areas. I also will note there's an action in laboratory over here. Here we go. In castle buyers, as well as in the scrapyard, you can calm down, which is how you can take an action to effectively reduce the amount of fear you have, which is important because otherwise that thing's going to charge up the track very quickly. And that is how you play Stranger Things, which means it's time for the review, starting off with ease of play. Overall, this is very easy to dive into, especially if you've played cooperative games before. This is actually designed by Rob Davio, designer of... oh my gosh, a bunch of games, but no, Matt Leacock is Pandemic. Rob Davio is like the Legacy systems and stuff. A bunch of time, a bunch of things, Seafall and Pandemic Legacy, all that stuff. But either way, this is if you've played cooperative games before, this is going to feel fairly familiar. You do the good thing, you do the bad thing, you're trying to be mindful of all the bad stuff hitting you. Past that, it comes down to the way this game is different, and that's primarily through the action card system and through the stacks of tokens you're trying to deplete. And there are lots of tools as far as how to look further down into stacks and get more information from what's in a stack, so you're not always walking in blind, but a lot of the time you are walking in blind into the experience. The game runs around an hour or so, although I guess you could lose earlier. You could have early losses in the game if you're not careful, but overall, not the hardest game to dive into, although it might be a lot if you're diving into this. If you're new to the world of board games, you're here diving in because you love Stranger Things, you saw this game on a shelf, and you're here watching this video, first of all, I apologize for how fast I talk, and secondly, this game is definitely easy enough to pick up, but it's not the easiest thing you've ever done, but it's not the hardest either. In any case, as far as my review, as far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, and it comes down, the first thing that I like about the game is that it comes down to the wire most of the time. If you're not careful, you could end up with an early defeat. If you play too dangerously with the fear, as I just did over here, you could certainly have a character die almost immediately and lose. But if you're playing it strategically, if you know what you're doing, This game comes down to the wire every time. When you win, you feel like you could have lost. When you lose, you feel like you could have won. It's a close game. You're on the cusp of taking down the Demigorgon, of rescuing Will, or alternatively you actually do, but you're doing so with like 2 of your characters at near full fear tracks, almost about to lose the game. It comes down to the wire every single time, and it does so while feeling true to the IP to an extent. Again, the exploring of stacks of tokens with your action cards, that's just inherently generic and doesn't feel like thematic in any way. But the overall wandering around the board, the allies you gather, the items you find, the overall sense of being in the world of Stranger Things is there to an extent, including the way the scene cards play out, the patrols chasing you down, Demigorgon showing up. To a certain extent, you feel like a group of kids with a group of adults trying to work together against an overwhelming odds and people keeping you down, and either you do successfully manage to accomplish your goals or you don't. But it's definitely a challenging experience that feels true to the IP, which is already a good thing in and of itself. The fact that it has tableau building in the game, it has allies, it has the lab. The lab is going to help you ignore those cards, making it stronger for you. You have items, you have a general sense of growth as you go through the game, of the ability to slowly get stronger or at least stay alive as long as possible while making progress on those stacks of rescuing Will tokens, and that gives you a decent amount of strategy as far as when to push a little further, what you're trying to get done as you go through the experience. Overall, this is just a solid game, a solid cooperative experience for what it's doing while staying true to the IP. Again, stacks of tokens aside, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat the fact that most of the game you are basically attacking stacks of tokens with action cards. That just feels like, okay, you're trying, and you do make progress as you go through it, but it is what it is. As far as what I don't like about the game, first of all, replayability is going to be the first concern, which is when you go through the game, this is an experience that I don't think I feel the need to overly play through it once I've won it a few times. You have the challenge, the sense of trying to beat a scenario, and you have Season 1 and Season 2, and that's good there. But I can't imagine this is a game that I'm going to dive into again and again the way I would to a typical cooperative experience. It kind of feels like an episodic game with only 2 episodes, and so I think replayability might suffer unless you're a huge Stranger Things fan. I think this is kind of a game that you definitely want to try, definitely worth experiencing, especially if you're a fan of the IP, but I don't think it's a game I'm going to constantly be pulling out and tabling. Although I will say, I'm definitely excited for Season 3 and 4, if or when that's, I assume that's in the works, I assume it's the plan, but I definitely am excited for that, but I don't think this is a game I'm going to hold on to forever. I think this is a game I'm going to go through, I'm going to try to beat it a few times, try and show it to other players for the experience, and then kind of move on from it from there. I'll also say that sometimes defeating stacks of tokens feels annoying. When you have a stack of 2 tokens, the system they have where you kind of make progress and defeat at least 1 token randomly, that kind of works. It feels that even when you failed, you made progress. On the other hand, when you're facing off against these larger stacks of 4 tokens, that feels much less fun to lose. It feels like you play a high number of cards and then congratulations, you got rid of 1 token, but you expended all your effort and energy just to stay alive. Those higher stacks really feels punishing if you don't accomplish them, and that certainly is frustrating as you go through it. And I'll also say lastly, this is a game where even if you're playing with, let's say, 2 players, I recommend playing 2 characters each because the walkie-talkie cards give you extra strength if you're sharing spots with other characters. And there is an ally who helps you count as a character to an extent, but if you're playing a 2-player game, I just find that there's not enough character sharing for those cards to have enough presence on the board. I think this game is better at 3 and 4 characters on the board, and I would recommend, controlling 2 characters with their own hand of cards if you're playing as a 2-player experience, and if you're playing as a solo experience, which technically you're not able to do, I don't even know what player count I'd recommend. 3 at least. I think that those walkie-talkie cards really benefit from having a shared group of players operating together, as opposed to a few characters doing their own things on this larger map. As far as I can see, others not liking. First of all, the biggest thing that I've mentioned a bunch of times, the entire game ultimately comes down to, let's guess how punishing this stack of numbers is and attempt to overcome it. If that sounds like something that's going to stop you from experiencing and enjoying this, then that might be the case. I don't think it's the best, most interesting mechanic, but I think it does kind of work overall for a game that's trying to be, accessible to the mass market while being engaging to hobbyist players, and I think it does a good job blending those 2 worlds. But if you can't get over a primary mechanic of the game, I understand that, and this might just not be a game for you. And then secondly, almost on the reverse side of things, this game is very hard. If you're looking for an easier experience, this is not that. This game is going to take you. I think this is the kind of experience that for most players, I'm sure there are many who have been beaten it the first time, I think for many players this will take a play or 2 at least before you can get that first win under your belt. There's a lot going on, and it does come down to the wire, and it's a punishing experience, and that might just be frustrating. I've seen even comments from people who play this like 7 times and haven't won yet, and while we're not there yet, it can be a punishing experience. As far as final thoughts on Stranger Things, The Upside Down from Come On Games, as far as final thoughts over here, I overall very much enjoy what the game is doing while having two things that hold it back. Those two things are replayability and the fact that ultimately a core mechanic is just guessing what's in the stack of tokens and trying to do the best you can. But the rest of it works. The rest of it is fun. The rest of it is engaging. I like the experience and I want to experience the experience and I want to see what Seasons 3 and 4 have to offer, but it's not a game I'm going to hold on to forever. It's a game that will almost certainly be a temporary fixture in my collection. For me, this is a 3.5 out of 5. I like it. I recommend it. I definitely have enjoyed it, and I think you'll have a good time with it, but I think though that aspects of the game, both the replayability and those tokens, are going to hold back just how high it is for me ultimately. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for another cooperative game that does have a more of a sense of just general replayability to it while being accessible in mass market, if you enjoy Stranger Things, I highly recommend checking out Horrified. Horrified is going to give you another degree of horror and kind of a cooperative experience, very accessible, very easy to dive into, and just will give you a sense of replayability while dealing with classic horror literature. And if you're looking to up your ante in this genre of taking down miniatures and punching them in the face, then I recommend Cthulhu Death May Die from Come On Again. Cthulhu Death May Die is going to have that core concept of trying to pace yourself, level up, do what you need to do before ultimately taking down the big bad, while also giving you that to get a degree of story and engagement, and I believe also co-designed by Rob Daviau as well, and definitely has similar DNA to it, but it very much feels like the bigger brother of what Stranger Things is, giving you, well, a whole lot more everything in Cthulhu Death May Die. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.